What are some of those indicators that we can be vigilant about in community life or our own lives, that we're following these other leaders rather than Jesus? You mentioned those relationally connected communities of Bethsaida and Chorazin, but by the end of Jesus' ministry, he was saying, woe to them too.
Right.
So what are some of those indicators that we can be vigilant about?
Well, we really need to be saturated in Scripture. I mean, we need to develop a scriptural mindset, scriptural metaphors, and be very wary about how much we get influenced by our culture. Now, this is where Jesus, this whole Hebrew world of imagery, metaphor, language, and prayer was Jesus' world. It's going to be our world. Now, I think, we are influenced by our culture in ways that we don't even know. But if we have a few people around us, writers, friends, we need to keep thinking, who influences us? Why do we want to do this? But keep this imagery, this following Jesus imagery is very, very precise. I mean, it's not a fuzzy idea. And I would hope that the one thing you might do in response to these addresses, is just take that image of following Jesus really seriously. And birth, death, resurrection, I don't think it's not difficult for me, now that I've done this work, to see Herods and Caiaphases and Josephuses and Zealots and Essenes and Pharisees all around the place. And I'm I'm attracted to these people. But if I've got a name for them, these 6 elements, I notice more quickly. Not always right away, but if I'm meditative and ruminative about this, for me, images are much more important than definitions. And looking for signs is not as powerful for me as looking for pictures or analogies between people or movements. Now, your mind might be different, and you might need another set of things, but get it. Work it out. Because I think it's important to have a community of imagination, of writers, of people who keep you alert to this basic scriptural stuff.
By the end of the 3rd century, Christianity became the official established religion of the Roman Empire. During persecution, a large church grew in China. Could you comment what causes the church to decline, why we cannot handle success?
Well, the minute we become successful, we're given these, it feels good to be successful. We like to be successful. And it seems at first as if we're doing the right thing. So I think what causes the church to decline is this capitulation to forms of leadership which are not the way Jesus told us to do it. We're not following Jesus anymore, we're leading the church. And but this happened at the reign of Constantine, but this happens over and over and over again. So people like us need to be on our knees praying, trying to do this right. We're working, but see, that's what the early church did. All the successful forms of leadership were around them, and they didn't care that they weren't noticed. They didn't care that they weren't successful. Now we call them successful because we see what's happened. I'm very slow, very wary of identifying success. one way or the other. Just let's learn how to be obedient. When we start looking for success or signs or things, we're taking our eyes off the immediate task we have to do. So we just know that the church goes in decline very quickly and very often, and some of it we see right around us. Persecution always saves the church sometimes because it sharpens everything, but you hate to say, well, let's engineer some persecution so we can get on track again. We don't have to do that.
Hi, Eugene. As we move into, perhaps some would argue, a post-Christian society today in the West, are there instances when it's appropriate for the church to take a more aggressive posture towards developing, or maybe not a violent stance, but a more aggressive stance in what we stand for, when we see injustice occurring, when we see other things that would incite an aggressive posture? Is that appropriate in the church?
Sure. The prayer that we just looked at is they prayed for boldness. That's aggression. I mean, that's an aggressive posture. It's an energetic posture. I don't want you to take from what I'm saying that we're not aggressive, that we're not energetic, we're not dealing with issues. We are. But violence isn't a part of it. Verbal violence isn't part of it. Emotional violence isn't part of it. Physical violence isn't part of it. I think the American patriots were wrong. I know that's maybe heretical because a lot of them were Presbyterians. But they were wrong. It wasn't what the church has done at its best. When the church has been being obedient, following Jesus, we haven't done that. Die first. Some of you, we're in Mennonite country around here, and the Mennonites have convinced me. Thank you, Mennonites. Well, it's go ahead, Bill. Go ahead. It's I think it's time for us to quit. So Bill gets the last word.
It seems that one of our problems in following Jesus is that the way some of us got into the Christian faith was because and this is a broader picture, for a few decades, particularly in the U.S., and then it's been exported around the world because it was a successful sales technique. People were given propositions to believe about Jesus, and if they said yes, they were in. But nobody told them the small print. Those of us who came to Christ as children, we couldn't read the small print. And so there's a point where the issue of following Jesus now, as we look to the future, how do we present Jesus to those who do not yet know him but may want to follow him? So the question is, how would you present Jesus to a group of 25 university students who are honest in their questions, come maybe from paganism or other systems, and they say, Mr. Peterson, why should we follow this man?
And I can't use a proposition. Well, Bill's question is a fair one, a good one. But I don't know what I would say. I think in all honesty, I don't know what I'd say. I'd stay there. I'd listen to them. And I'd learn their names. And I'd keep meeting with them. And I would I wouldn't give them propositions, but I would enter into as much personal relationship as I could with them and use the language of Jesus and Paul. See, I really don't believe there's any technique in this. It's an immersion in community. And it's an incarnation, it's an embodiment of our beliefs, and it's prayer. So I don't think it's a whole lot different than it's ever been. I really don't. But what I think is different is that we've had, well, that's not so different either. But we've had a lot of high-profile, depersonalized techniques in our century in the church. And they've left us with a rather shallow, culture-driven Christian society, which is very regrettable. But I don't think we can do anything but just try to do it right. But see, everybody has little different gifts in this. I'm a pastor. And the way I do it is I get in there and stay there and learn these stories and find these relationships and talk about Jesus and let them see how these scriptures work in their lives. But, you've got different gifts. There are different ways to do this. I don't think but I do think I'm probably too pleased with what coming on these three big names, Herod, Caiaphas, and Josephus, and these reform strategies that were surrounded them. It seems to me that gives me an imaginative world of criticism, of understanding, discernment of what goes on around me all the time that looks very good and is very attractive to me. I respond to those things. And yet, by keeping this metaphor of following Jesus in the forefront of what I'm doing, it helps me, hopefully, to get from getting seduced or distracted or off the track.